Keanu Reeves confronts a rude talk show host. His response makes the audience silent. The studio audience was electric with anticipation. The late-night talk show had promised a special guest, none other than Keanu Reeves. He was known for his humility, kindness, and wisdom, and fans adored him for it. But tonight, something unexpected was about to happen. The host, a man notorious for his sarcastic humor and relentless prodding, leaned forward in his chair, smirking. "Keanu, let's be honest. You're this action star, this mystical nice guy everyone talks about. But isn't it all an act? I mean, come on, no one is that good all the time." The audience chuckled awkwardly. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his face calm, but his eyes studying the host carefully. "You think kindness is an act?" Keanu asked, his voice steady but carrying weight. The host waved his hand dismissively. "I think Hollywood is full of illusions. And you know, you have this reputation for being the internet's nicest guy. But come on, you've never lost your temper, never had a bad day." Keanu leaned back, crossing his legs. A slow smile formed on his face, but his eyes remained serious. "Of course I've had bad days. I've felt anger, sadness, frustration. I've lost people. I've been hurt. But the way I see it, the world already has enough cruelty. Why would I want to add more to it?" The audience fell completely silent. No one laughed. No one whispered. Even the host, who had spent years making celebrities squirm with his sharp tongue, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Keanu continued, his voice softer now, but full of depth. "You don't have to be perfect to be kind. You don't have to be fake to be decent. I don't do it for an image. I do it because I've seen what life is like when people choose the other way." A pause. The weight of his words hung in the air. Then one person clapped. Another followed. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, cheering, not just for a movie star, but for a man who had just reminded them of something simple yet profound. The host cleared his throat, clearly caught off guard. "Well, that's deep, Keanu." Keanu smiled, then leaned forward. "It's just real." The interview continued, but from that moment on, the tone had shifted. The host never tried to belittle him again. And the audience? They walked away knowing they had witnessed something rare. A moment of pure authenticity in a world that often pretends. As the applause slowly died down, Keanu simply sat there, composed, his eyes reflecting something deep, something unshaken. The host, usually quick with a snarky comeback, struggled for words. He glanced at his cue cards, then back at Keanu, as if searching for a way to regain control of the conversation. "So," the host finally said, forcing a chuckle, "that was quite a speech. Maybe you should start writing self-help books instead of making action movies." A few in the audience laughed, but it was uneasy, unsure. Keanu, however, didn't flinch. He simply smiled. "Movies can be a form of self-help too," he said, tilting his head slightly. "Stories have power. They shape how we see the world, how we understand ourselves. Sometimes a simple action scene can say more than 1,000 words." The host smirked, trying to regain his usual edge. "All right then, let's talk about action. You've done some crazy stunts over the years. Ever regret putting your body through all that?" Keanu's smile grew wider, and for the first time he leaned in as if sharing a secret. "Regret? No. Pain? Absolutely." The audience chuckled, but pain reminds you that you're alive, that you're pushing yourself, and when you do something you love, the pain is worth it. The host nodded slowly, finally seeming to drop his act. "I have to admit, Keanu, you're a hard guy to rattle." Keanu chuckled. "It's not about not getting rattled, it's about choosing how you respond." Silence again. The host stared at him, and the audience seemed to be holding their breath. Then, finally, the host sighed, shaking his head with a half-smile. "You know what, Keanu? I think you might just be the real deal." Keanu leaned back, flashing that signature, humble grin. "I think we all can be." The audience erupted into applause, not just for a Hollywood star, but for a man who had just reminded them of something simple yet rare. The power of kindness, the strength in humility, and the wisdom in choosing how to respond to the world. And as the cameras panned out, the host, usually the one in control, could only sit there, nodding in quiet respect. As the applause filled the studio, Keanu simply sat there, his expression unchanged, absorbing the energy without feeding off it. The host, for once, seemed unsure of what to say next. He shuffled his cue cards again, but they suddenly felt meaningless. The usual tricks, the snarky remarks, none of them would work here. Keanu hadn't just answered his questions, he had disarmed them, turned them into something deeper, something real. Finally, the host leaned back, exhaling sharply through his nose. "You really don't play the Hollywood game, do you?" Keanu smiled, but there was a hint of something in his eyes, something that suggested he understood the game all too well. "I just try to be me. That's all anyone can do." The host studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether to challenge him again. But then, something in his posture softened, and he shook his head with a chuckle. All right. You win, Keanu. I don't know what I expected, but you definitely gave me something different tonight." Keanu dipped his head slightly, a quiet acknowledgement, nothing more. The moment lingered, heavy with unspoken words, until the host finally cleared his throat and turned back to the camera. "Well, folks, I think we just got a masterclass in Zen wisdom from the one and only Keanu Reeves. I was expecting a movie star, and I think I just got a philosopher." The audience laughed, but it wasn't the usual forced laughter of a talk show. It was genuine, warm, touched by something rare. Keanu simply chuckled and shrugged. "I'm just an actor who's been through a few things." The music swelled, signaling the end of the segment. The host extended his hand, and for the first time that night, there was no bravado, no showmanship, just a handshake between two men who had, in a way, reached an understanding. Keanu shook it firmly, offering a small nod before turning to wave at the crowd. The cheers were louder this time, filled with admiration that went beyond his films. As the cameras cut to commercial, the host leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I get it now," he admitted. "It's not an act." Keanu smiled, eyes twinkling. "It never was."